Even with Tesla's auto business looking really good now with improved gross margins, over 20% growth expected next year, and the planned introduction of new vehicles, much of Tesla's future and stock growth is contingent on the success of Tesla's robotaxi plans. Some are still very skeptical, while bulls are now even more confident. We just got a monster update from Tesla about their plans for full self-driving. But how confident are you that the rollout will happen next year? What's going to happen if Elon does or does not end up working with the government? We've got the bulls here with us. I'm Herbert Ong.
I'm Alexandra Mertz, the cat lady, replacing Sander, the cat lady.
And I'm simply Jeff Lutz. Nice to be with you all.
Okay, so first of all, a little bit of housekeeping. We are moving this show to Thursdays as a live stream. So we normally have done it recorded. We publish on a Friday on my channel, at Brighter with Herbert on YouTube. But we're going to move it to Thursdays at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 noon Eastern, as a live stream. And we're not only going to live stream it on the YouTube channel, but all of our X accounts. So keep a watch out for that. We'll start that next week, and we'll see if that's a better model. The company and the product. I don't look at the quarterly stock movement.
A very realistic bull, questioning certain decisions.
The rational bull. We enjoy listening to bears.
Looking for the red flags. You're supposed to react.
Let's get started. The big topic is robotaxi. How likely is that going to happen? But before we go there, let's talk about what's going to happen in Q4 and Q 2025. If in November the election happens and Trump wins, Elon Musk has been saying that he's going to run the Department of Government Efficiency, or he jokingly called it not the Department of Government Efficiency. How would that actually work? Would he have to quit these companies that he currently is running? Is there going to be a conflict of interest? Who wants to start first? Do you want to start, Alexandra?
I can start, but this is actually heated discussion because Jeff and I, for once, don't agree on something. So I don't believe Elon is after a government job or even a cabinet position or in anything, something that is involved with something regular where he has to, where that is his day job, and what would mean that he would have to put all his investments into a blind trust, that he would have to be dedicated solely to that to avoid any conflict of interest with any of his companies. Now, you do know that all of his companies need permitting, new rules. I mean, you don't change the world without needing from one moment or another government or state, federal government or state permission. So it's certainly would be, if he has an official role, it would certainly be necessary that he resigns from all his roles. Now, I don't think that's how it's going to work. I do believe, first of all, that Elon is not somebody that would have, an interest in getting something traditional. He's not a career person. He has his money, he has his career, has his standing, he has his ambitions, and none of this is in any way traditional. So I don't think that he's in any way, interested by this political career ladder. The second point is that he will be much better in the short-term solution finding if he has what I call straw men, meaning other people in government to whom he has a direct line, and he is the whisperer of the good ideas directly to Trump, but also obviously to all the cabinet levels that are interesting for him, which are immigration. Legal immigration is a big topic, but I mean, obviously even more Dodge. So on all these subjects, I think he will put in place a straw man that will replace him and his ideas and filter them through. That should allow for him to be able to continue having his roles. I mean, he will have an additional role, but we survive the what was this is actually subject to quite a few things happening. So next Tuesday, the elections, Trump winning, but also the Republicans winning Congress, and so House of Representatives and Senate, because if not, all of this will remain pipe dreams. Nothing is going to happen in the 2-year cycle if there is not a majority in both the House and the Senate to actually implement those things. So, and I really hope, if that's the case, that Republicans are then, ready to go, and these ideas very quickly get put into law proposals and get voted on, because everything just always takes so much time. So given all that, my position remains that no, he's not going to resign. He will, however, become one of the most influential people in Washington, because he has obviously clearly Trump's ear. There's not one rally without Trump praising what a genius Elon is. I mean, good thing he discovered it a bit later than all of us, but there we are. And he will still focus on Tesla getting us to autonomy, getting us to Mars, getting Neuralink, focused on the right priorities, and so on. So I don't think much will change, and I'm not at all with those people who think that he will have to resign. But let's go to Jeff, because I think he doesn't agree with me for once.
Yeah, there's a lot there I do agree with. Trump would have to win. There'd have to be kind of a mandate. Multiple branches of government. One, straight R. I still think that these departments can change several things without congressional approval. I think every single headcount move needs to be congressionally approved. And I agree with you that Elon does not want a government job. That's not where he wants to terminate his career, sitting in government. Those are all things I agree with. However, I think this situation has become a little bit less clear and a little bit less of a slam dunk in the past, week or two, especially as you see him out there with the town halls. You see, so there's specific things I'm going to bring up. The one, I think Elon views this as existential, meaning like if this doesn't get fixed, if the amount of spending we do doesn't get fixed, then his future ambitions of a multi-planetary, being fully sustainable and so forth, like those things could potentially get interrupted if, we're a broke country and we literally go insolvent for some reason. So I actually think he views this as existential. And when he views things as existential, what does he do? He digs into it and he tries to go in and fix it. Look at every single signature thing that could have blocked the path to full scale of EVs, whether it was supercharging stations, the battery supply chain, even lithium refining, like everything that turned out, that could have been a potential blocker, whether it's in supply or cost. He went in and dug in and they built it themselves at Tesla. That's one of the reasons they're originally vertically integrated. So I think number one, I think he views this as existential. Number two, in the Pennsylvania town halls, he talked about this being a somewhat temporary thing of like, I ultimately want to build rockets and cars and so forth. So what does that imply? That implies that there's going to be some amount of time and some amount of focus for some period of time in the government efficiency side of it. Now the next question is, what does that look like? I'm just starting to piece together things. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. I don't know. I think it's actually malpractice that there isn't a reporter out there. There isn't somebody that's trying to drive, a good 30-minute one-on-one conversation with Elon to say, like, how are you going to do this? Like, you're out there on the stump in Pennsylvania. You're at the Trump rallies. You're talking about what you're going to do. How are you actually going to do that and run your companies concurrently? So here are some of the other clues. So one, I think he thinks it's existential. Two, at one of his stump speeches, he talked about returning to build, he ultimately wants to build cars and rockets, which means to me there's some amount of time, focus, and energy. Now the question is what does it look like? I mean, I think all the Tesla, the escalations of the directors to VP, I think they're all deserved. I think it's all. I mean, the question is okay, was that completely disconnected, or is he kind of getting the next? This is great, by the way, if you're into Tesla and so forth. The fact that they elevated 4 people to much more senior roles in the company, I think that's great. Is it also setting up, a management structure? If he has to take some sort of sabbatical from the company, I don't know. The other so that was kind of another clue that to me was that just a coincidence, or is that and by the way, they're all a lot more vocal on on X and so forth. I don't know. Is that all a coincidence? Maybe. And, so again, I can kind of sit back and say, well, I think everything's going to be okay. But I also think that this has actually changed from the time the first concept came out and the first time that Elon and Trump were talking. I think this has actually changed over time, and I think it's evolving. So I don't think it's binary. I don't think it's one way or another. Meaning, like, I don't think he was going to do some sort of separation or sabbatical maybe 2 months ago. But I think there's more variables now between what he's saying publicly, and then today he posted about fixing immigration policy so we get the best and brightest at the front of the line in terms of being able to legally immigrate with a lot less resistance. Okay, so is he going to be involved in immigration policy for tech? And for people, it makes sense. He would certainly know a lot about it, but again, it looks like his span and scope of what he wants to influence and what he wants to do on the government side seems like it's only growing. And then finally, how do you do this work that literally impacts the size and scope of government, impacts the size and scope of regulation of the various regulatory bodies that regulate his own companies? How does he do it? And do you think he's going to do it in a suggestive manner of like there's going to be a middleman or person or woman? At the end of the day, Congress can say like, well, okay, middle person, where are you getting your input from? And if your input's coming from Elon Musk, well, I don't think that works. So it's just okay. I'm not saying it's going to go one way or another. I'm just saying that it's certainly a question, and it's certainly, to me, journalistic malpractice that this has not been like a real like hard-nosed journalist hasn't like really asked the right questions, asked the right follow-up, and really try to understand like, okay, if this happens, how are you going to do this? What does day 1 look like? What does day 30 look like? And I think it's malpractice that's not out there yet.
I do think that you're right, that this is a very, very important topic for him. He's going to dive deep in it. He's going to try to solve it. The question we're asking, though, is whether or not Elon's going to have to quit or some sort of leave of absence, some sort of formal leave of absence, or does it just treat it like he did with X, right? You just added on a new responsibility for the next 3 to 6 months. He's really focused like he was on X, cut all the people, really dove into the architecture, put it into place, but still kept his eye on the most important things, the fires that have happened in his other companies. That could be what he does here. Now, the question is he going to quit? And when he quits, does that mean then he's not going to have any input at all for his big companies like SpaceX and Tesla? Now, the reason why it's hard for me to imagine that he's going to actually quit and not have a single say for Tesla for the next year is that 2025 is a very important year for Tesla. It's a very important year. This is the year that they're going to roll out robotaxi. They're going to release at least 3 or more new vehicles. This is the year that they're going to continue building out their AI infrastructure that they need to have in order to be able to get into not only XAI Grok, but also real world and the bot, right? The bot, this is where the bot matures into a production scale level. They're going to be doing the whole restructuring of factories to be the unboxed model. They might be buying new megapack factories. They might be buying new or building new factories in general. This is the year of scale. And so it's critical that he's, again, I'm not saying that if he leaves or he pulls it out of eyes off the ball, takes his eyes off the ball, that somehow that's what's going to happen. It's going to be an issue. He's so far in his history never shown that that's been an issue. His company still progress. His company still succeed, still do better than any other company in the world, despite him adding yet another organization in his purview. It is a massive organization, government, but I just can't see that he's going to quit and leave for a year. More likely, he'll add it on. And, he did send a post out recently, and he said, oh, fine. Somebody did ask him the question on X, what about the conflict of interest? And he joked and he said, oh, fine, we'll call it not a Department of Government Efficiency. Now, just by labeling, what does that mean? Right. No. I get it. But it's like you can see that his thinking is, we'll find a way to reposition it so that I won't have these conflict of interest is my point.
Herbert, I don't know if
let me
we're
add
talking
to
past
that.
each
I mean,
other.
I was a little bit involved in it.
I just want it's not a bandwidth issue. Like the guy
Right.
can do like a ton of stuff.
It's not a bandwidth issue.
He set up 2025. I agree with you. Like it's not a bandwidth issue. He's elevated these key leaders. He's got Franz, he's got Lars, he's got Tom Zhu, he's got a SpaceX team. Like he's done all the right things there. I don't think it's a bandwidth issue. It's more of like, how are the mechanics of this going to actually work? And he's got 175, $200 billion of his personal wealth tied up in Tesla. Like, how does this work? That's the thing I just don't know.
Well, the one thing that will not work is that these things work quickly. They don't. I was a little bit involved in a part of an attempt to an immigration reform in the first Trump presidency, and it just takes forever and usually gets killed in committees and whatever. It is crazy. So this is not at all something that Elon will enjoy and wants to do. I can promise you that. That's not how it works. The one thing he wants to be the thought leader to kick it off. He will be the one kicking their butts so that it moves on, but he will very quickly be exhausted because everything takes forever. The last immigration reform was under President Carter in the 90s, right? We've got now nearly 30 years without a change in the language of immigration reform. Not one comma changed. Why? Because all the immigration attorneys want it to be just like that because that's how they make money. The whole system is a wonderful platform for both parties to fundraise on. Nobody wants to change it. So him coming in and say, we have to change legal immigration. Maybe Trump jumps on the same horse and goes, okay, let's do this and this and this and that. I mean, I have 50 ideas what needs to be changed tomorrow. They will most likely all die in bureaucracy. And he will not want to deal with that. He wants to be the initial thought thinker, the one pushing the idea, making it public, keeping some speed on it. But the length of the whole process will exhaust him, and he will move on to new subjects, and he will not take a job where this becomes his actual only matter of doing, because he will go crazy.
Yeah, that may be another option, right? Like where there's an attempt at things and there's a start, and then there's like there's a kind of, quick out or something because of the lack of, I remember the prior business counsel, but I think this is much deeper than that. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, I agree with everything that both of you are saying. It's just, it's kind of mysterious. It's becoming more and more mysterious. I'm getting like less and less answers of like, oh, it's going to work like this. Mm-hmm. And there's no issue. I think this is actually creating some amount of uncertainty, to be honest with you. I don't think it's like a Trump wins and everything goes to the moon kind of thing. I think it's just, there's uncertainty on kind of either way this goes. Split government, that would be, again, that's one of the things, like you look at markets, it's good for markets. It may be really good for the situation too. I don't know. We'll see. At the end of the day, as a citizen of the country, I'd love to see apply what he's done in the business world to figure out if that can actually be done in government, because quite frankly, a lot of the proposals are to tax people more versus figuring out how to spend less. So, and he's the last person I would kind of count out like we're out of ideas. I don't think we're out of ideas at all. I think he probably has a lot of really good ideas. It's more of just the mechanics of how does this work? You have hundreds of billions of dollars of your own net worth tied up into these companies. How will it actually work? I mean, how did it work? I mean, Trump and his family, they were just sued endlessly, just nonstop. And that's far less, far less ownership, far less relations to the government and government contracts. So to me, the mechanics of how this would work, it'd be a fascinating, David Faber, MSNBC, or CNBC, somebody just sitting down and just having this back and forth. I don't think they want to have this conversation, quite frankly, in the open. It'd be a little bit presumptive, I guess, prior to the election actually happening. Yeah. But I just think it is a little bit of malpractice of just not even having something off the record of how would this work.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And we know Elon is a pretty brilliant thinker. He'll find a way to get what he wants done, to make sure it's done. So I actually don't agree when you're saying that, he's going to discover the bureaucracy and it's just going to fall out of the wayside. No, Elon already knows that there's bureaucracy, but he'll find a way. He'll think about it. He'll figure first principles approach, give proper incentives to the right people, the right places, so that things do change, and or just take a cut, just cut, get rid of everybody, restart all over again, whatever. But government's
That's not how
different.
it works. Budgets
different.
are Congress.
Yes,
It's
I
not
get
even
you.
the president.
Yeah.
Ugh.
You can't hand wave this, Herbert.
No, yes, I get it. I just optimistic that if Elon says he wants to do something, he rarely fails. So that's all I'm saying. But yeah, this is difficult.
Is that being on brand?
Oh, no, I
Ryder?
hope he wins. I think we're all rooting for him to win.
I do. I am.
Elon will win. He will get what he gets done, and he has a good heart, regardless of politics. So that's where we'll leave it at that. So let's move on to our
I think none of us doubt that.
So let's take a look at the agenda for today. We talked about Elon's government role, possibly. Let's talk about Tesla's robotaxi in 2025. How likely is this? There's some still doubting that it's going to happen. What's the progress like? Are you guys confident of what they've outlined as what's going to happen in 2025? We'll talk about XAI raising money, now valued at $40 billion. But where's Tesla? Can Tesla be an investor in this XAI juggernaut? And then if we have time, we'll talk about what we're expecting in Q4 and what we're expecting in 2025. So we know at this point that this morning, Tesla AI dropped a monster update for what they're going to release this year. Yashar Kalaswamy, who's now vice president of Autopilot, he's in charge of the whole program, said lots of work, but the team's aiming to get to feature complete for unsupervised FSD with the V13 series. So in the V13 series, which he says will be rolled out, V13.3 is going to be rolled out wide by the end of this month, by Thanksgiving. And at that point, it's going to be feature complete. And as they continue to work with that, this version, he thinks it can lead to unsupervised FSD. And of course, we remember that Ashok and Elon said that we're shooting for safer than a human driver by mid next year. And so I won't go through this because I've done a bunch of shows talking about it, but what's coming next? So here is the list of V13, but basically better video inputs, native hardware 4 inputs, 3 times model size scaling, 3 times model context length scaling, 4 times data scaling, 5 times training compute scaling, because Tesla's Giga Cortex is actually ahead of schedule. Much improved predictions for collision avoidance following traffic controls, audio inputs for better handling of emergency vehicles, smoother, more accurate tracking, and then the final features of integrated unpark, reverse, and park, and then the ability to say what destination options you want. Do you want it to pull over? Do you want it to park in a specific spot? Do you want it to go to the driveway or garage? And improve camera cleaning and handling of camera occlusions. Just a whole host of features that they're going to complete. And then they're already saying that we are already seeing a 4 times increase in miles between necessary interventions compared to 12.5.4. This version 13 is going to be sent to internal customers by the end of this week. And then it's going to be until version 13.3 that they see wide release for at least the hardware 4. So we had a live show this morning and Jeff was there. Alexandra, did you have a chance to take a look at this? And what's your thoughts on this update?
I didn't look at it and I didn't listen to you, so I let Jeff take the lead on this one.
Yeah, thanks. First off, I do have confidence in what they're doing, and when you see people talk about this on X, it's staggering to me. Again, I do have a background in terms of like managing quality and managing supply chain at a tech company and looking at large swaths of data, millions of devices out in the field, fleets of information. And I just find it hilarious when I see people talking on X. Well, that's not what I'm seeing in the FSD tracker. Look at the language that he's using in the post. He's talking about they've defined something as necessary interventions. I'm sure they have different classes of interventions on their dashboard inside of Tesla. 1, 2, he's looking at hundreds of thousands of vehicles and millions and billions of miles of data being reported. And then these smaller trackers are, smaller subsets. They would be thrown out of any big company as being like, okay, this isn't really meaningful data. What they were probably doing inside of Tesla is they have their own ability to segment the data and look at it by various different regions, various different vehicle types, driving behavior. They have ways to segment the data to understand how to drive that next level of improvement. And they even talked about it because you see the symptoms of like what they're trying to clean up as they go to this release. They're talking about the green light and yellow light behavior. They're talking about speed. They're talking about a number of different things that people have been pressing that microphone and providing feedback for with with their FSD rides. And so what I view this release as, I look at the different features. I'm like, wow, they're really building out the feature complete. In any type of software development, it's honestly it's a race to lock requirements. It's a race to get the feature complete. And then it's a race to drive down a bug curve. And that's like kind of the classic heuristic code development. This is a whole new ballgame. So, but you still, so we're probably never going to be quote unquote 100% feature complete. There's always going to be new types of features and things that they want to include, but you want to get all the features that would be required for this to operate like a robotaxi, the ability to pull over, back out of a spot, park into a garage spot. Like you need these types of features integrated. So to me, this is a great sign. I bet my bet is they have all these features coded up and they have them in various internal releases and they're testing them and they're going to figure out what they can pull into the next release or what's not stable enough and they'll push it to the next release. And that's how these things are managed. Finally, I do see folks on X, like they're looking at their watch and saying, oh, it's October 31st. And what I will just tell you, like in classic, like heuristic, like older, like smartphone software, for example, you could have a 30-day variation in a software schedule because some major problem was found. And that's like, this is nowhere near the tech that we're talking about here in terms of what Tesla is doing with real world AI. Like it just, they're on completely different scales. So when we used to do scheduling, when we were doing something all new, features that were never been done before, maybe silicon that was never been done before, those schedules had a lot more variation in them than when we were doing derivative or iterative type products, like some of the other, major tech companies you see out there, and they're putting products out and it looks like last year's product minus a little bit of a change. Those things are much more predictable. And I see people like, they're kind of like, well, where is it? Like, why is it a week or two late? My guess is you're going to see a 30 to 45 day window on these, releases. And I think they've actually condensed that window down from earlier in the year. I remember we were promised 12.5, I think in May, and we didn't get it in June, maybe not in volume until July, and we didn't get it in volume until August. So I actually think that they're getting better. Looks like they have more capability. This cluster coming up in Texas is going to be very interested to see in terms of like, it seems like this is the first build where we're going to experience the power of hardware 4. Like this is a release built for hardware 4 to use the capability of the cameras, the capability of the compute, versus the other releases have been honestly built and they're emulating hardware 3 type capabilities on hardware 4. Now we're going to have a build that's purposely built to really exercise and use the full scope of capabilities in hardware 4. So there's a lot to like here. There's a lot changing here too. And I think that's why Tesla put in a couple of point releases between, call it B13 and B13.3, and they gave themselves a couple of weeks. So to me, this looks very promising. I'm not surprised that, getting V13 out into volume is going to take a couple weeks longer. I think that's totally understandable given how new this is. And I think from there, Tesla can now update their data points and understand, like, did we get that 1000x improvement? And are we still on track for mid-year? And remember the metric, necessary interventions, because right now they're already at a crash safety level that's 10 times better, more than 10 times better than current vehicles. So now they're measuring necessary interventions. And my guess is they have several other lower priority measurements that they're doing inside of Tesla for people hitting the pedal, for people nudging the wheel. I'm sure they're logging all this input, and they're going to address it in due time.
Yeah, I think the big debate are people who believe what they're hearing from Tesla and Elon and the others, or the people who don't believe them, right? And you can say what you want about Elon and when he says, but when Ashok Kalaswamy and the team released what they did last month, And they said, here's what we're going to accomplish last month. And now they just released a much longer list of the things they're going to accomplish in November. There's a lot more confidence here because it's the team, number one. Two, if you look at the language that they used here, they're saying that we are already seeing a 4 times increase in miles between necessary interventions compared to 12.514. So that tells you a couple of things, right? We're already seeing it, which means that, they're pretty confident it's happening. And two, that this is compared to what it was before. There's a 4 times increase. So you can trust that number because, again, it's coming from the team. Then you got Ashok Alaswamy coming out and saying, this is version 13 is on path to be the unsupervised FSD that's going to be able to accomplish that. So those kind of things you're looking at, right? Then you've got also this Yunta Tsai, also part of the AI team, and he said this: running inference of 1.3 gigapixel per second in power efficient way is insanity. With zero latency between the photon being captured to inference, we found a lot of creative ways to achieve this. We're also bringing audio to increase fidelity of emergency vehicles. We hope to reduce annoyance of weather notifications and safety improvements. And, this is technology that was used at the robotaxi event at 1010. So they're already playing with this. They already know the data. So this is, kind of showing you that this is not just new. Now, there are people that are saying that this is not true. And let me show you this. Alexandra, I'd be curious to see what you saw if you haven't seen this yet. The Zoox co-founder of Zoox, which is a self-driving, vehicle. They say that he says that Tesla doesn't have technology that works. This is him. He was interviewed by TechCrunch, and these are the Zoox vehicles. And then he started bashing Tesla, saying, okay, first of all, he doesn't believe that Tesla will be able to launch a robotaxi ride-hailing service in California next year, despite what Elon says. The fundamental issue is they don't have technology that works. And by works, I want to differentiate between a driver assistance system that drives most of the time, except when it doesn't. And then you have to take over, versus a system that's so reliable and robust that you don't need a person in it. And said, our perspective is you really do need significantly more hardware than Tesla's putting in their vehicles to build robotaxi that is not just as safe, but is especially safer than a human. And he says, it's about 100 times less safe than a human. If you look at the metrics that are publicly available, usually it does the right thing and then sort of lulls you into this false sense of complacency. And then it does the wrong thing. You're like, oh my God. Elon replied to him saying, if he hadn't gotten bailed out by Amazon, his company would be dead already. So knives are coming out. People are very concerned. That's a sure sign here when your competitors bashing you. That means that they're afraid. What do you think, Alexander?
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, he tries to remain relevant. He tries to reassure Amazon and whoever else gave him money that he still has a future. For these guys that we'll also see for a lot of the robotics guys in 6 to 12 months, it is horrible to have Tesla as a competitor, because they're just, they're the smartest, the quickest, and they have the means to build it at scale. And so now you have 7 million Teslas on the road that improve regularly and will be at the level, needed in a couple of weeks, maybe short months, but that is going to be it. And so when you see that, and you've invested all your past 5 or 10 years into your project, and you believe in your project, and it's looking cute, and somebody gave you money, you don't want to face that reality. It's a tough reality. It's a tough reality for those that build bots to have to understand that, the ones that will be able to build these bots at scale, that is Tesla, and for the others, it's going to be a real hard struggle. I always wonder, I obviously, as you all know, I'm only an investor since 2020, but this has been built up since 2010 or even earlier. We looked earlier, Herbert, you said since 2013, they're speaking about autonomous cars. We're 11 years later. With a genius like Elon, with the brightest of the bright that he has in his teams, you think that a Zoox, I'm sorry that it even has this ridiculous name now, that it takes somebody like that who then understands that Tesla is not there, but he is. I mean, that's just not how it works. And I'm not cursing against this little bus, and this is cute, but this does not have the scalability and the technology necessary to win the battle. And it's tough for him to understand. I'm sorry for him, but he shouldn't just curse around. He should just try to get better.
Yeah. Any more thoughts on that, Jeff?
No, I think Elon hit on the business side of it as well, of like, needing to get bailed out. And that's like, do you have a trajectory in terms of your unit economics and your kind of terminal business case or lifetime business case, like where this thing crosses over and makes money at scale? And I think that's where a lot of these taxi services or these robo-taxis are challenged right now. And they don't have it figured out yet. It's kind of like, it's almost, I always kind of viewed it as like this like prototype thing that was kind of booted out of the prototype lab. And, there's a few dozen of them or even a couple hundred made, versus Tesla going the reverse of like, we're going to make this thing in production and we're going to enable it. It's going to take us longer to get to the starting point. My famous graph, Herbert, that I probably need to make a chart of. It's going to take them longer to get to the starting point, but the ramp curve on Tesla lighting up robotaxi is going to just, it's going to be intense. It's going to be like unlike anything that these folks have seen before. And it just finally, I think Alexander is right. Of just like he has to say something. Like he can't just say, well, like they made something that's cheaper and better, and when they start, it's going to be at scale, it's going to crush us. He can't say that, but it's actually the reality.
And Zoox did announce that they're going to have a couple dozen Zoox vehicles in 3 cities, San Francisco, Las Vegas, maybe those 2 cities, and they're going to launch it in a couple weeks for beta testing.
Very cute. Very cute.
It's cute. The thing that as I examine this, first of all, I am just even more confident that Tesla will hit the dates that they're saying. Number one is because it's Ashok Swami, not just Elon. But 2, they're using actually fleet data to make these decisions. But 3, it's also, that I know a lot of bulls don't want to talk about this, but there's lots of plan Bs and Cs. If you think about what he did to get here, that they did the supervised FSD to get here, that if, let's say that he already confirmed that Cybercab does not have to be ready for them to launch robotaxi. They can just use Model 3s and Model Ys, existing cars. That's what they're doing. They could just have very specific geofence locations. I know a lot of bulls don't want to talk about it, but if there was a plan B or C and they're still waiting for something to happen before they can do that, you can launch it with that. There's a variety of other options that they could do to really, if they needed to, right?
Good point.
Yeah, so Robotaxi 2025. Now, one of the things that Elon, I've got a little surprise here for Alexandra. One thing that Elon already
What did I do?
back, you spoke to Elon directly about asking him about what is the margin that you would get with Robotaxi. This was years ago. Maybe you can remind me. Let me play it. The volume's a little
May
low. Let me
23 at the first shareholder meeting I went to.
I'm
You're
Alexandra Mertz. I'm Tesla Boomer Mama. Very happy to be here.
All right.
So very grateful to the Tesla team and you, of course. Just want you to know we love the emotions every day, joy and less joy, but we're there. Shareholders, it's not easy. We're here not because it's easy, but because it's hard. So my question initially was on in-house financing. You already answered that, and I want to congratulate you to the double investment grade rating. But then I asked my Twitter subscribers, I'm sure you're going to appreciate, what they wanted to bring forward.
Sure.
And that question made the cut. Here we go. Automotive, including SAS, peak margin, the same for energy. What number and by when do you have the best Elon guess that we get there?
So I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
So this is the peak margin for automobile, including SAS and energy, and by when will we get there? Your guess. I know nobody will sue you.
Sorry, what's SAS?
Well, software as a service.
Oh, okay. You mean self-driving?
FSD,
Yeah.
What's going to be the top automobile margin? And
Yeah. I mean, what I was saying earlier is that at the point at which you have a truly autonomous vehicle that can drive around with no one in it, the utility of the vehicle, I think, as a rough guess, is probably 5 times what it is today, because people will drive an average of an hour and a half a day, perhaps, so 10 hours a week. But if the car is autonomous, it can probably, just speculation, but it probably can operate for a third of the hours in the week, which would mean 50 or more hours, thus a 5-fold increase. But the car costs the same.
Sure, I understand, but what is going to be the margin for Tesla then? Because you're obviously thinking you're going to sell much more FSD then, right?
You really didn't want to answer.
In place of robotaxis, you may have a cut with fleets. So did you do any projections what the automotive peak margin for Tesla could be in 2 years, 5 years, and the same for energy?
Well, I mean, this is definitely, we're in sort of highly speculative territory here. But obviously, if you've got a car that costs the same and has, say, I don't know, a 20 or 25% margin, and suddenly is able to be used 5 times as much, then you might have 80% margins, and the revenue would increase several fold. That's why I say it's probably going to be the biggest asset value step change in history of Earth. Yeah. And energy does not have simply does not have such an increase in asset utilization. So I would expect energy to remain at sort of a 25%-ish to 30% margin.
Isn't that fun? That was great.
I can't believe I went back and back and back and asked more and more and more. It's crazy. I mean, I was so afraid, right? I mean, there you're standing in front of Elon asking a question. Today, I feel like a year and a half later, I feel more reassured. This question actually came from Jeff. Jeff was one of my subscribers, and in the subscriber group, we asked, what was the question, and then people voted on it, and Jeff's question was the best one.
Well, we're going to start seeing actual margin. We did see the 30% margin in energy. Now we're going to see. Yeah. He answered the question eventually, so that was great.
And I just want to, this doesn't mean we'll have 80% automotive margin. I mean, I thought about obviously his response for months and months and months, because I wanted to make sure I understand what he means. So when you buy a car, when you build a car, let's say for $20,000, you are going to have eventually 80% of that as a margin, but not the first day. When you sell a car, you have a one-day event. This is the price you build it for, this is the price you sold it for, and that is your margin. When you get software as a service, you don't have a one-day event. So this profit or this margin will be spread over multiple years. So you can't reason saying, oh, we're going from a 20% automotive margin to 80%. And I also want to put that in question, because half an hour later, he had an interview with CNBC and obviously had seen his lieutenants in the middle. And he was obviously clearly called out for having to lower that number to 70, because he made sure that on CNBC he said, oh, I said 80, but I actually meant 70. So that number got corrected by himself in the same hour. But again, it is not an 80% margin that you will find on day 2 after you've sold the car in your financials. This is a margin over the lifespan of the car. Now you can think, how long will your car live, right? And then spread it over multiple years. But it also means that after 4 or 5 years, you actually have built up sufficient old cars that already produce that, so that your margin is actually constantly growing, because the old cars are delivering now the
additional margins. Mm-hmm.
Actually having a model where it builds up over the time.
Yeah, just rest assured though, even 5 years from now, Tesla is shipping millions of robotaxis. Everybody's car has this capability. And Wall Street's going to report, oh, here's the auto margins, X software as a service, X this. Here's the hardware margins. Here they are. Here they are.
Yeah.
Here are the hardware margins. Just so you know, they're 55%. They're 55% without the software deferred and software as a service revenue, and they're 25% without. Just so you know, they're 25%. Just make sure you know that. even though the company's totally transitioned to being a software as a services type company, but we're gonna bring it back to those hardware margins. Yeah.
Hilarious. That's right. That's gonna be fun. All right. Topic that everybody's still talking about and they need to talk about today is XAI and Tesla. XAI is apparently in talks to raise funding, and it's going to value it at $40 billion. Who are these people that or companies that are going to be able to invest? Is Tesla part of that? XAI raised $6 billion just a few months ago at $24 billion. So in just a few months, it's already at $40 billion. Well, because they just launched their largest supercomputer in the world called Colossus. And so, and by the end of this year, Elon Musk's companies, both Tesla and XAI, will have brought online roughly $10 billion worth of training compute capacity in 2024 alone. This is important. It's going to train Grok, FSD, and Optimus. All right. So where is Tesla, Alexandra? Why is Tesla not in this game? Yeah.
Good question. I mean, Tesla, the way Tesla can invest in XAI will take time. So I just don't want people to be impatient. A couple of things to add. They're not at 40 billion anymore, they're at 45. So there was first information that came out of that was 2 days ago at 40. Yesterday afternoon it was 45. They're trying to raise another 5 billion at this 45 billion valuation. And they're actually at the moment only doing that by contacting investors who already have a tranche, so they can increase their stake in it. It's not about new investors coming in. So this is a completely normal game. I'm sure that they have, they had some milestones set with their investors saying, when we're at this milestone, we're going to raise another 5 billion, maybe later a further 10 billion, whatever they want. This is completely normal for venture capitalist investment. And I'm sure many of the existing investors will continue to support and continue to inject money into it. So this is normal, and this is not yet the tranche for Tesla. Why? So we had last year first tentative where Elon said, or Elon was asked, and he said, yeah, I wouldn't mind at all if Tesla wants to get into XAI. That never happened. But you have to understand that Tesla is currently in a very precarious situation. We've left officially Delaware. I'm sorry I have to talk about Delaware again, but it puts us in this twilight zone, and where everything is so complicated. We've left officially Delaware the day after the shareholder meeting, so that was the 14th of June, if I remember right. But we need to still notify Delaware of us having left. And that is probably just undergoing as we speak. And this is not going to be a small little battle again, because they want to make a hearing out of this and blah, blah, blah. So this is, so we have still this tail of that story that's hanging around. We obviously still have also the big Tonetta case and the appeal that will follow, but I don't think the Tonetta case is going to hold us back. It's just clarifying that we are now a Texas company. Why is that important? Because there will be lawsuits against this investment in XAI. Why? Just because, if you have silly lawsuits like the Tonetta case, you will also have silly lawsuits putting in question why Tesla is doing an XAI investment, should have done it earlier, later, different, whatever. There's always people going to sue. It's going to be much more difficult to actually sue in Texas than in Delaware. So you want to make sure you close that chapter in Delaware properly. That's the first point. The second point is, this is the best way to actually make sure that future law cases against this are not successful is by not just the board approving it, but making it a shareholder vote. Shareholder vote means it has to be properly organized, with the committee having to, remember the last one with Kathleen Wilson-Thompson, having to study whether, at what price, how, whatever, document all that, then put it out to shareholders. Then they have 6 weeks to study all that, and then there's a shareholder vote. So if they are currently preparing that, obviously this is much too late for the current round of investments, but could be one for early spring, whatever. The earliest that I can see us doing a shareholder vote is very late in 2024, but much more probable in early 2025. And yes, the price is going up of XAI. There's, that's the price to pay, unfortunately. But it also is, the safety that this was done as clean as possible when we launch it. So I'm not surprised this is not for us yet. I just hope it comes sooner or later.
I want to take just a quick different angle on it. I agree with what Alexander said. What First off, I'm just interesting. Like, how did the valuation jump so much? Is one question in my mind so quickly. Is it just literally bringing up Colossus? I know they've released another model. Anyway, it's just fascinating how rapid this is growing. If you look at it as
The
a
model
percent,
is third best already. So you can
Yeah.
take a look at where OpenAI and Meta are being valued
Yeah.
at, and then you go, we're
Yeah.
third best.
I guess that can make sense. Yeah. And the next thing, Herbert, we were talking about, and I credit you for kind of bringing some of this up. What's going on with Elon and Apple and Tim Cook? There's just a lot of lovey-dovey back and forth, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is one area of collaboration, because it, quite frankly, it can be a little bit messy with Apple and OpenAI, with how entrenched they are with Microsoft, and then of course you have Google and Gemini. They're just more direct competitors. Not saying that they can't and don't work together. They have gigantic deals on each of their devices together. But I mean, an XAI and Apple tie-up could be, it's certainly a way for Apple to put leverage against OpenAI and against a potential Gemini partnership, if that were in the cards. That third entrant, XAI, can be very disruptive in that, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's something being worked on. There should be something being worked on in the background based on what you just said, Herbert, and how quickly XAI is accelerating.
That's a very good point. If XAI partners with Apple and is in every phone, in every car, and every robot, pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. AGI is on its way, but that's why they're valued this much. Okay, that's sad news. That's bad news, Alexandra. I really, can you not figure a way, Alexandra? Figure out a miracle. Get us in there
Come
sooner.
on. We did what we could. On August the 12th, so this is already 2.5 months ago, we sent a letter with more than 1,300 shareholders, more than 40 million shares, you might remember, to the board saying, keep on moving, right? Do something. We want this. So they have our order to look into it. Now, like I said, it has to be a committee. I think we have to make sure we get out of Delaware clean and, whatever,
Okay.
and then set up the shareholder meeting. So we're hanging on bureaucratic stuff again. That's just it.
All right. Appreciate all the work you've done, Alexandra. Again, you're really helping us shareholders, and this is a big one. It's a big one. I want us to move faster. Okay, last topic here is Q4. Let's just drop 2025. I think we already covered that. Jeff, what are you expecting for Tesla in Q4?
Your record production, record sales, growth in EPS. There's some really good folks on X you should follow. They're doing some modeling. I like AJ at Alo. I always pronounce it so just look up AJ. And I like some of the analysis work that he does. I like some of the thoughts. I'm not one that guesses this by the penny, but I do see EPS growth. It does make sense. And I do see record growth in terms of vehicles should be over 515K. Energy should still be very strong. It looks like there's some people that are trying to look at some of these Tesla AI posts, and they're trying to back calculate. I think Reigns is trying to do this on X and others. And it's not surprising to me, by the way, too, because the last time Tesla talked about, and the topic is the percent of people that are using FSD, full FSD supervised, because this topic is one of the most horribly discussed topics I see on X. I see it on it's horrible. Like, people talk about global FSD adoption rate when it's unavailable globally. The supervised version is only available in the US and Canada. But anyway, I see that growing. There's some estimates of it being in the mid 20s. I wouldn't be surprised when in V11 it was in the low to mid 20s. So I wouldn't be surprised, just given the capability and performance. Almost everybody that's taken delivery of a Cybertruck, is going to have this capability on there as well. But I see FSD continuing to grow. With unit growth, I see greater fixed cost leverage. There could be some puts and takes. If they're trying for a big quarter, they could be doing a lot of expedites in December, and those expedites will eat into margins, especially on the logistics side. So there could be some puts and takes, but the greater fixed cost absorption should drive, another improvement in COGS. And so yeah, I think they're structurally set up to continue cost reductions. It's not going to be linear. It's not going to be perfectly linear every quarter, and there could be some surprises. But yeah, the thing on the bad side, I'd be watching for big expedites in December if they're trying to make a big number for the quarter, like greater than the 515. And I think it's a good setup going into the following year. And I think Tesla has an answer. If people think IRA credits are going to evaporate, on January 20th, that's just not how government works. The IRA is a law, and if there is, if the Republicans do sweep, I do think that program is at risk, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen day one, and it's going to take some period of time. And if there's mixed government, which is, I think, more likely, quite frankly, than not, then I think that law stays in for a long time. And if anything, there could be laws that replace it. Not to speculate here, but there could be laws that to replace it that really align with what Tesla's been doing, which is localization of manufacturing in the U.S. and a high content of localization. It's not just assembly in the U.S. Buy your parts abroad from Mexico, Canada, China, Korea. It's very high localization in the U.S. So if the next administration was really trying to drive more of that, and by the way, both sides have been really trying to drive greater localization, that would be good for Tesla as well. So I think Q4 is going to be quite strong. I think it's going to be a great setup, and I think Tesla has an answer next year with the lower cost vehicles by the end of the first half, and that could be an answer too if that tax credit is not as available as it once was before. But again, that's pure speculation.
There's one word you did not say that you have been saying quite often for the last, quarters, and now you're saying that could be a surprise, and that word is licensing. And there's a couple of reasons why I think it might actually happen in Q4. And again, I know many of us are, tired of all these predictions, but just give it some thought that number one, the election is happening. And so a lot of decisions have been delayed because of, the outcome of the election, whether it's a factory being built or not built, announcements, people are waiting. OEMs are waiting to see what's going to happen with this. The other thing is that version 13 is going to come out in November. And version 13, if Ashok is correct and he's calling it unsupervised FSD, it is as a OEM partner, you're going to see, okay, they've made progress. This is a real deal. This is happening on track as we think. I better get involved now, or let's announce it soon. Those are small reasons, but maybe that could happen by this year. And then something, Alexandra, I don't know if you heard this yet, but Jeff and I were talking about this. We're speculating, or at least I was, that actually I believe Tesla already has multiple partner OEMs who have approached them already, and that it's Tesla that's deciding which one to choose. Because if you remember Elon saying that we want to have a partner with at least 1 million, capacity of 1 million vehicles, you can bet a lot of tiny companies have already approached them, says, pick me, pick me, pick me. And if they wanted to, they could have said, sure, but they don't. They're picking the largest companies to get this fastest growth, the ones with the most commitment, and they're going to put them to that. So I think it's almost like they're in the driver's seat at this point, choosing which one they want to pick. And you know how we all hoped that they were going to make these announcements in the first at the 1010 event. Then we all hoping that they were going to say something at the earnings event. It could now happen before the end of this year.
I actually partly disagree with you. I think it's not only Tesla in the driver's seat, but also the partner. So the partner may have good reasons not to want to say it too early too, right? There's timing of both of them. The second thing is I just feel like it's not that much of a priority currently for Tesla. They had their breakthrough moment. Autonomy is reality. The others come when they come, if they come, and if they don't, well, they're lost. I think that the whole attitude has changed. They're not looking at a development partner anymore. They want to make sure everybody knows they can be invited to the party. And I think they also want to avoid any issue of monopoly. Oh, sorry about that. Any issue of monopoly. But other than that, I don't think Tesla is, craving for a licensing partner at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's truth in both what both you're saying. I think Tesla does have to be selective. You don't want to work with somebody where you invest the time and the engineering resources to bring a model up, and then they do like, look, Ford just stopped production of the F-150, and you don't want to work with someone who's got a high model count and low volume, because you're going to be doing a lot of work for very little revenue. So I think you're right. They do have to be selective on that. And they've said that they have partners that they're in conversations with. So we know that they've been approached, or we know that there's some sort of dialogue happening. The question is does it terminate, does it move into deal form, and when? So this is one of the reasons, like, people are trying to say, like, what do you do between now and Tesla rolling out robotaxis? And quite honestly, you should do what feels right for you and your time horizon and your risk tolerance. But I just view it as highly unpredictable. There's a lot of surprises out there. And I think we talked about some favorable, some unfavorable, even earlier in the call. But yeah, I think it's very difficult to predict this licensing piece. I also think it's one of the most under-modeled. I used to think COGS was like the most poorly modeled thing in the Tesla story. And this is another one in terms of just various licensing arrangements. I think there's a lot of different deals and permutations they can do to license their technology, because still today, we don't have confirmation of anybody making pure EVs profitably. And look at the BYD report. They sell vehicles under $30,000. That's the majority of their portfolio. They have north of 21 different models, and they still couldn't produce the total EV volume that Tesla did. And yes, the revenue's up, but they're the number 2 provider of battery packs in the EV auto industry, and they have this whole components business. So anyway, I found it interesting that the net income was a fraction of Tesla's. They can't get the volumes that Tesla has, and in Tesla's, probably their MSRP is in the mid 40s, I think, right, for Tesla, and BYD's literally less than half that, and their volumes. So you never get that next order of analysis when you see the everybody wanted to just get the headline, BYD overtakes revenue. Well, wait a minute. They couldn't get the volume, and they have half the MSRP of Tesla. What does that tell you?
Okay, well, we covered quite a bit of great stories. The most important ones, right? Is Tesla going to get to robotaxi? Is Tesla going to get a piece of XAI? What's going to happen in Q4? And what's going to happen in the election? What's going to happen to Elon? So like you said, there's a lot of uncertainty, but also there's a lot of signs showing that robotaxi is coming. FSD is improving. The infrastructure for the factories are getting better. And the plants are just speeding up. Everything that we're continuing to hear from multiple new VPs at Tesla. So thank you, everybody. Reminder that we're moving this. Tesla's executing. We're moving this show to Thursdays as a live stream, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern. Tune in. You can go to this channel at YouTube. You can go to each of our X accounts, Tesla Boomer Mama. You got Jeff Lutz at the Jeff Lutz, Xander, and then mine as well. And then we'll have our guests coming. So thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Herbert.
Thanks, Herbert.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.